怎么回事？再探再报，妹，走れ！
When you think about all of the different things that draw a person to a gacha game, there are some top-line items that come to mind. The design and attractiveness of their characters, its mechanics and gameplay, and of course, its story. The story is, without a doubt, the first thing that every player experiences when they load up the game, and is also the core element that carries you through your journey across the game's mechanics, modes, and characters. However, it's become demonstrably clear from the integration of story across gacha in 2024 that a lot of games, especially those under the Hoyoverse umbrella, have taken one of the most important parts of a story, how it's told, and made it one of the most painful experiences in gacha gaming. Games like Honkai Star Rail and Genshin Impact, lauded for their massive player base and absurd financial success, have turned their storytelling into a vehicle to drive playtime rather than an actual good experience for the player. Kuro Games, on the other hand, with their hit title Wuthering Waves, stands in direct opposition to this worrying trend. While this game might not have the same revenue, player count, or fervent defenders as these titles, it's proving that it punches way above its weight when it comes to the quality and player experience that they've been able to provide across the short 7 months the game has been live. And today we'll be taking the time to break down how this is the case, exploring what makes Wuthering Waves' storytelling so impressive compared to its peers in gacha, why other games have failed to live up to the early expectations set across their player base, and what Kuro's efforts have led to for the gacha space as a whole. As always, if you're enjoying this content, please hit that like and subscribe button. A fact of the matter when it comes to Wuwa's overarching story is that it has, quite literally, the most cutscenes in gacha gaming when compared to other top titles like Genshin Impact, Honkai Star Rail, and Zenless Zone Zero, despite the many public critiques top content creators have made in the space that have proven to be demonstrably false. When a developer tells their story in this fashion, emphasizing showing rather than telling, players witness visual spectacles and absurdly detailed breakdowns on what the characters are actually doing, rather than simply hearing about what they're doing. A mechanic abused in Hoyoverse titles where the devs spam static screens with dialogue at their best and completely blank screens with a description of what's going on at their worst. When you lack the show in show not tell, devs drive a disappointing lack of engagement across their players that makes the storytelling experience an absolute slog, with gameplay that essentially plays like a visual novel in titles where the gameplay is quite literally anything but that. Wuthering Waves objectively minimizes these issues across their storytelling, and while there was one patch in version 1.2 that was by all definitions a filler that didn't have quite the same level of storytelling as all the others, it's clear that Wuthering Waves as a whole stands out among its competition, if the only measure we're looking at is cutscenes. However, there's another dynamic when it comes to Wuwa's overall storytelling that continues to differentiate it compared to other titles, and that's the sheer level of quality put into the delivery of its dialogue. Patches like version 1.3 and 1.4 highlighted this strength the most, with pretty much every interaction across characters incorporating fantastic depth in their animations, an incredible amount of nuance in facial expressions, and perhaps most importantly of all, dynamic camera panning across the area where the conversation is taking place. This, again, much like cutscenes, keeps a player engaged while they're in the middle of a character conversation and makes the entire experience something that players are actively listening to, as opposed to other titles where the best course of action to maximize your satisfaction is to spam the spacebar or left mouse button as fast as humanly possible to skip through their horrifyingly dull experience. There is absolutely no excuse at all for a 2 to 3 minute section of dialogue in games like Honkai Star Rail to look like this. Characters alternating between 2 or 3 poses across the entire conversation with a completely fixed camera, all bundled with incredibly verbose, bloated, and uninteresting dialogue. It's evident that there's an absurd lack of effort put into the storytelling experience in Hoyoverse titles, all for the pursuit of extending your playtime across the patch with as little investment as possible. Shocking behavior from a company that reportedly makes billions. The last component of Wuwa's storytelling, and arguably its most controversial, is the presence of a skip button. Many fervent supporters of past Hoyo titles argue with all their might about how a skip button is a net negative to the game, claiming that it diminishes a player's understanding and engagement with the story as a whole. This argument holds true if a player is constantly skipping important main story quests, but completely falls apart when you consider how many dull, uninteresting, and pointless dialogues you're forced into when it comes to things like world quests, quests, side quests, or even daily ones as well. Forcing an audience to strap in and fully listen to unvoiced conversations just to farm premium currency when it's clear that the experience is extremely low quality is one of the fastest ways to drive player dissatisfaction, disengagement, and lack of desire to actually play the rest of the game. Tasks like claiming Harmony Trailblazer's 6 Eidolons involves countless conversations with a mind-numbing number of NPCs across Penacony just to make them usable in endgame content, and quickly became a task that felt like you were actively suffering just to get a reward, as opposed to a satisfying experience that involved, well, actually playing what the game was advertised as. Having that skip button available across all content lets players focus on doing what they came to the game to do, play it, and it also places an incredible amount of responsibility on the developer to actually craft a story worth listening to. When you see dialogue that looks like this in version 1.3 or that in version 1.4, the skip button may as well functionally not exist. You're not skipping these unless you don't care about story progression at all. And if that was the case, then you're having one of the worst times possible anyways in Hoyoverse titles like HSR or Genshin. All a skip button does, regardless of the type of player you are, is improve the overall experience and ensure a higher quality across the story. When you factor in all of these incredible advantages present in Wu-Wa's story, it's clear that Kuro Games is a company that respects their players. They would have had plenty of opportunities to implement similar designs to Hoyoverse across their storytelling that would have greatly improved their analytics regarding playtime, but these devs were focused far more on something else, creating a good game. Reflecting back on the horrific experiences like HSR's 2.6 main event or Genshin Impact's nightmarish Aranara World Quest and directly comparing it to the storytelling experience in any of Wu-Wa's patches should make that distinction clear. Kuro doesn't put content into the game that makes you not want to play it, and unfortunately, Hoyoverse does. Thankfully, with the release of ZZZ and its much tighter, cohesive, and show-focused storytelling, one can assume that Hoyoverse has gotten plenty of feedback regarding the mental torture they've subjected their players to in previous titles, and are streamlining at least one of the games in their portfolio. With a complete relaunch of the game in version 1.4 and the removal of the worst storytelling mechanic in gacha gaming, its TV system, I can't deny there's a lot of excitement across gacha players, including myself, for what the game can become. Their devs finally listened, after ignoring complaints from players across all 3 of its beta tests, and now the gacha community as a whole can see that Hoyoverse does listen to critiques, only just if their game isn't doing well financially. We can only pray something similar happens to games like HSR and Genshin, and the best way to make that happen is to simply stop spending money on a game that doesn't respect your time and forces you to experience some of the worst storytelling in gacha gaming. Kuro Games is a company that makes changes and updates for the betterment of their player base without being forced, and they're a model company in the industry that every developer should follow. Storytelling is just one of the many things that they've made great again, and version 2.0 is only promising more. As always, if you enjoyed this content, please hit that like and subscribe button. Peace out.